firebase.google.com. As easy as that URL is, I will paste it into Slack. Helps you build better mobile apps and grow your business. It helps you build web apps too. It's just that's not as catchy, right? So there are a few different products as part of the Firebase suite. Down here, you'll see try Firebase for free today. Integrating into your app is easy. So go ahead and click Get Started and sign up for an account. You can use your Google login to do that if you have a Gmail account. So among other things, Firebase includes a real-time database. Real-time because it works over WebSockets, and as you update something in your app, it updates the database in milliseconds, fast enough that it may as well be instantaneous. Similarly, if you update something in Firebase, your app can know about it in mere milliseconds. So that makes it nice even for things like chat. It's a NoSQL database, a NoSQL database. So who knows SQL or any kind of relational database? Yeah. So it's not that, right there. Who knows MongoDB or any other NoSQL database? Okay, same people. So it's a little more like that, which basically means that the database is structured like JSON, and that redundancy is sort of accepted. It's okay to repeat yourself a little bit, which is a no-no in relational database design. Firebase also includes services for authentication and security, and some others too. We are going to be using the authentication API too. But first, the basic real-time database. So once you're logged in, don't fail to notice that the docs are pretty handy. So if you do need to look something up, they're right there. And add a new project. Name it something sensible, like Note Herder S2 Morning. That's what I'm going to call mine. Not Note Herders 2 Morning. Note Herder S2 Morning. All right. Add Firebase to your iOS app, to your Android app, or to your web app. Hey, web app, that's us. Oh boy, it's a bunch of stuff. Okay, neat. I'll leave this up here. We'll just worry about that in a second. So we could use the Firebase API directly to add this stuff to our app. There's a package that I like for using Firebase in React specifically. It's called Rebase by a guy named Tyler McGinnis, who is a pretty well-known React guy. A Relay-inspired library for building React.js plus Firebase applications. Here's a link to this. So we don't know what Relay is, but it sounds neat. And hey, there's a nice friendly bear welcoming you to Rebase. What is Rebase? React.js makes managing state easy to reason about. We've seen that. Firebase makes persisting your data easy to implement. Rebase combines the benefits of React and Firebase by allowing each component to specify its own data dependency. Forget about your data persistence and focus on what really matters, your application's state. So what he's really getting at is that as long as you manage your state, this package with some initial setup will just sync it with Firebase automatically, and you don't really have to worry about it or explicitly make any calls to the API once you've done that initial setup. So that sounds easy as heck. Let's do it. So in the folder where your Note Herder project lives, you can run yarn add re-base or npm install re-base. assuming you do have npm5, which I think you all do now. And that command will do two things. It'll download Rebase and its dependencies and put them in node modules. And it will add the dependency to package.json. And that's the difference with npm5 versus previous versions of npm. It would not add it to your dependency list. But here it is. So double check that it's there. Otherwise, somebody who downloads your project and runs npm install or yarn install will not get Rebase, and your stuff won't work. So how do we use it? Documentation is pretty decent. Sync state, two-way data binding between any property on your component state and in the endpoint in Firebase. So we haven't used two-way binding before. What that means is that a change we make will get sent up to the cloud and vice versa. Any change up there will also get sent down to our state automatically without our manually managing that data flow. There are downsides to two-way binding, but it's pretty handy for this feature. So we've installed it with npm install or yarn install. So now we need to put our application configuration somewhere. So we're going to create a file in our application in our source directory, of course, with everything else. And I'm going to call it lowercase b base.js. It's not going to be a class, so, or a component. Sorry? Okay, is it back? Yeah. So base.js in our main source directory. Now this file is going to contain our API key. And we'd rather not commit that to the repository. So let's go ahead and add it to getignore. Getignore is in the root of your project. Let's just add at the bottom base.js. And that way when we go to commit things, it will just not even know about that file. So we won't accidentally commit it.
Otherwise it'll add that file and will it take like a lot of space?
No, I'm not going to take any space. It's just, it'll have secrets in it.
Oh, gotcha.
So what we will do after we fill out base.js is we'll make another copy called base.js.example or base.example.js. And that'll at least tell people, hey, you need to edit this thing with your own credentials. So in here, we need to import Rebase, capital R Rebase, from the package Rebase, which is lowercase with the dash in it. So you get the from here when it's not a file that's in our hierarchy, when it's something from node modules. It's just the name of that npm package, basically. And I think Rebase will install Firebase as a dependency automatically. Import Firebase from Firebase /app and import database from Firebase /database. So what we have to do is initialize a Firebase app per the instructions that we actually got from the Firebase page using this. Now, we don't need the script tags and stuff. We're just going to put this stuff in our file here. I'm not going to save it to a var first. So I'm going to copy this object here. And then we're going to call Firebase initialize app and pass in this object directly. So copy this part. It's going to be different for everybody. So make sure it's your version. Then I'm going to create a variable called app. And that's going to be the return value of Firebase.initialize app. And initialize app is going to receive that object So then we don't need, yeah, there we go. That's better. Okay, so that initializes it with my API key, the URL of my database, my project ID, my messaging sender ID, which we're not going to use. But so then we need to save our database in a variable. So const db equals database, which was imported from Firebase/database. Pass in our Firebase app as the argument to database. And now we have a reference to it. Then we use rebase to create a class out of that database that we can use elsewhere. And I'm going to export that from this file. So export default capital R rebase dot create class DB. So how to do all of this is really in the README, or well, yeah, it's all here. Yeah.
This is a slightly related question. When, like, you upload something to GitHub that requires like an API key,
Mm-hmm.
so you would just specifically leave it out and say insert your own, like when you download it, or
Yeah, and make sure that you reference that in the README. Don't make them figure it out. Yeah. Yep. Somehow my indentation here is getting messed up. Oh, because I copied and pasted. So now we're using rebase create class to get a reference to this database, and we need to use that in app.js. So off we go. Oh, wait, first I promised we will make a copy of this file. So go ahead and make a copy of base.js. And name the copy base.example.js. And every place that there's something specific to your Firebase, just replace it like your API key here. Your app.firebase.com. Your app. Your app. Your messaging sender ID. And that is not in gitignore. So that will be committed to the repository. And like really good citizens, in our README, could add some setup instructions. Copy base.example.js to base.js and add the appropriate configuration for your Firebase application. So an app we need to import from base.js. So I suppose underneath our component, I will say import base from base, not example. And if we look at the documentation for sync state, which is what sets up the two-way binding, Allows you to set up two-way data binding between your component state and your Firebase. Whenever your Firebase changes, your component state will change. Whenever your component state changes, Firebase will change. Sounds good. So that seems like something we should do pretty much as soon as this component gets loaded. Who has used lifecycle methods in their own work here? Few people just stumbled across that on their own. So because we are inheriting from React component using extends here, because this is a full-blown component and not a stateless functional component, we have access to some things from the superclass. Among those are the lifecycle methods. And what those are is methods that, if present, will run at certain points in the lifecycle of that component. When it's first created, when there's a change to its props, that kind of thing. You can find the documentation for that easily enough. It's one of the first pages in the quick start on the React docs. State and lifecycle. So it tells you about a whole bunch of them. Blah, blah, blah. Well, they're listed somewhere in here. I just skipped over them. These methods are called lifecycle hooks. So component did mount is one of them. The component did mount hook runs after the component output has been rendered to the DOM. This is a good place to set up a timer. So let's see about using that. I wonder if we could do it in the constructor, actually. I haven't tried this. I think the examples in Rebase show it in component did mount, so that's what I've always done. Let's add it. Yeah, okay. Let's try it. So we have base now imported from the other file. We need to call base.syncState. And sync state takes a couple arguments, an endpoint, and some options. So the endpoint, that's a string it says, and it says the relative Firebase endpoint to which you'd like to bind your component's state. What? Now that we've used this configuration and put it in our application, we don't really need this page up anymore, so let's X out of that and just poke around Firebase for a minute. If you make the screen wide enough, you should see a left menu there. If you don't, you can always use the hamburger menu to get to it. And you'll see a variety of things, one of which is database. So let's have a quick look at the database. Here's a little notice. Default security rules require users to be authenticated. When you see a message like this that looks like it's trying to get your attention, go ahead and read it. It's probably something that could be useful to know. So security rules require users to be authentication. We don't have authentication set up yet, so maybe we should edit our security rules so that that isn't required right now. So let's click on this Rules tab. And it's a JSON-looking thing. Rules is this object here. Here's .read. The value is auth not equal null. Write auth not equal null. So what if, for right now, we want to say anybody can read or write? Just replace auth not equal null with true. Notice up here it says unpublished changes, and there's a great big publish button. That means make these the actual rules, save these changes. So I hit publish, and then I get a big red rule. your security rules are defined as public. Anyone can read or write to your database. We did that on purpose, so I'll dismiss this message. But do notice that we just did something risky. And remember, this was the rules tab on the database section, so let's go back to data. Oh, and there's a little simulator so you can test the security rules. Okay, note header S2 morning, null. Let's click this little plus thing here, and it adds a level of hierarchy under that. What if we had, say, notes? And underneath that, instead of typing in a value, if I hit plus again, it'll add a level of hierarchy underneath that. And I could say like name, note 1, value. That should be another object, so I'll hit plus. Title, note from Firebase. I'll hit plus up on notes again, or on name here, note 1. Body. This is the body of that note from Firebase. Okay, neat. So let's see if this makes any more sense now. Endpoint, the relative Firebase endpoint to which you'd like to bind your component state. So in base.js, we specify which real-time database this is. This is the one that we were just looking at, the one at this URL. And so basically it wants a key inside that database that it should sync with something from your state. And that key is notes. This is the piece that we want to sync. So I'm just going to say the string note, notes. And that's our first argument. Our second argument, options, type, object, properties, context, that's an object, it's required, the context of your component. Here's all that really means in this case. First, this should be inside an object. Context, this, that's the context of our component. State, string, required. The state property you want to sync with Firebase can be an arbitrarily nested property a la foo.bar. So it is a string, and it is the property from state that we want to sync. And inside our state, that's called notes. So that is just, again, the key here is state. And it's just the string notes. That's the idea. Does this do anything yet? I don't see anything happening just yet. I did use the constructor instead of component will mount. Let's see what happens if I use component will mount. So to use one of these lifecycle methods, you just define that method. So let's just add this whole base sync state here to that. Still don't see anything happening. Let's see if we've got any errors or anything like that. No, but you know what? We added some stuff from NPM. So just for kicks, I will restart my server. Let's open up our React DevTools. Look at our state for app component. And there's nothing in there. Yeah, Kai.
Just getting a massive compiling error.
Okay. that. This is called notes. This is called notes. Oh yeah, it didn't actually take yet. Yep. So now you see, it looks a little more like an object, right? Looks more like a JSON type structure. And now we see note from Firebase. Right here. Not bad. Yeah, Brandon. Yeah, to the server? Yeah, npm start or yarn start. Yeah. Okay, there could be a problem in your package.json or something like that. Can I look at that in just a second? Let me try one more thing. I'm going to try adding a new note because this should work both ways, right? Note from the app. This is the body of that note from the app. Added right in the web browser. Now I haven't hit save and new because it's saving all the time, right? All that really does is new. Let's go look at Firebase. Look at that. We got another note. It just worked. So among other things, that means this. I can refresh the page now, and I get my notes back. Not getting them from local storage, I'm actually getting them from a database up there in that big cloud. So that's pretty rad. We should definitely commit this. That seems way too easy. All right, we added something to get ignore. We added something to package JSON. Added something to the README. Yarn.lock got set when we ran install or yarn add. App.js, we added the reference to base. And then base example, notice base.js is not there because of get ignore. This is what we want. Our secrets aren't being committed. Sync. Oops. With Firebase real-time database.